Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers review. This is a update before the game in Budapest this evening, as Rangers are ready to take on Ferencvaros. Josh is out there for us. He's been in Budapest for the last few days, and it's now time for the big one that everyone is there for. And the team has just dropped. So, Josh, before we come to you, I'll just bring this team up on the screen because that's what everybody is interested in. This is the starting 11 for Rangers tonight. Jack Butland in goals. We think it's going to be a 3-4-3 formation. James Tavernier, Nasser Giga and Emmanuel Fernandez make up that back three. Across the four, Jaden Megoma and Max Aarons on either wing. Inside as Nico Raskin and Connor Barron as the midfield two. And then up front, maybe the biggest talking points of the evening, Jedi Gisama off the left, Bojan Majowski up front after his 2 goals against Kilmarnock the other night. And then, Josh, your initial reaction to that starting 11, any surprises in there for you?
Yeah, not really. Myself and Derek both thought on the morning briefing that it would be a back three, Blair, although I think Derek was just agreeing with anything I said because he is a fragile state of conscience. For me, it sort of makes sense that Rule would do this because he's went game to game so far, hasn't he? We've spoken about this a lot, rather than Rangers just having one formation or shape. He said from the start that he's going to adapt and he's not necessarily going to be consigned to that. He's got a lot of injuries. He's not got an abundance of options, and actually he's not really got many options on the wing whatsoever. I think you'll see Danilo kind of play that narrow position just off of Bojan Majowski tonight, as we've seen him do in the past. So it sort of solves Rule's issues from an injury point of view, but also it matches up with a Ferencvaros team that, as we've discussed this morning and over the last few days, have a really good record. I've got out of their European group the last 2 seasons. Have won the title last season. They're top of the Hungarian group. They're 1 point off the top of the Europa League 36 team group. So it's gonna be difficult. And they've also scored a fair amount of goals. So not really surprised that it goes with a back three, and also not too surprised that Danilo comes in. I'd have liked to see Mikey Moore in there. However, given he's just come back from injury, Danny Rule said in yesterday's press conference that Rangers just have to be careful with how they bed him back in. Would expect to see him at some point tonight, and definitely expect to see Dujon Sterling at some point as well.
Yeah, so we'll just bring the bench up. That's on the bench this evening: Liam Kelly, Sterling, Stewart, Adamson, Curtis, Cameron, Moore, Asgard and Chermiti. I think you're right with the Mikey Moore call that he's maybe just been protected a little bit. He is obviously just back from injury. He showed what he could do at the weekend when he came off the bench against Kilmarnock, but I think throwing him into this game might be a little bit too much for him on his return from injury. I think Dujon Sterling coming back into the side at some point. We may see that tonight. You said you're confident he'll get a few minutes tonight, leading up to this run of games where Nasser Giga is going to be away at the African Cup of Nations. So you'd expect Dujon Sterling to get a few minutes in his legs with the view to start playing again. I actually quite like the look of this team tonight. I know it's got a little bit of criticism, but it looks fairly balanced. I think that I like the 2 naturalised fullbacks on both wing backs. I think James Tavernier always looks quite good as part of this back three because he doesn't quite have those legs to be marauding up and down the pitch anymore. And I think he works quite well in that back three to offer a little bit of guidance, a little bit of a calm head alongside Nasser Giga and Emmanuel Fernandez. I think Connor Barron will give you that dig in the middle of midfield that you're going to need for that. I don't know what you think about that, Josh. I think that Max Aarons and Jaden Megoma not being tasked too much with a whole lot of defensive responsibility and being able to get up and down there, knowing they've got the 3 behind them, I think it might suit those 2 on a night like tonight.
Yeah, again, we said in the show this morning that Ferencvaros, for as good as they've been in Europe, they don't dominate a lot of the ball. As the 5th lowest possession share, despite being 6th in the competition. Again, maybe that suits Rangers a little bit more tonight if they can give over a little bit more possession and not see as much of it. Max Aarons was speaking yesterday in his press conference about Danny Rule simplifying the game for himself individually and also the Rangers as a whole. And there's not a lot. I don't think there's much different he could do. Blair, I'm looking at the bench there, and you've got Dujon Sterling, who he knows not going to play a full game, but will play at some point. So you're banking on him maybe getting, 30 minutes, probably coming into that right, maybe right wing back, depending on the result, but most likely right centre back with James Tavernier pushing up. You've got 2 youngsters in Stewart and Adamson. They're unlikely to start, given that they've not made full debuts. Finlay Curtis hasn't started yet under under Danny Rule, and came off the bench against Kilmarnock and looked fine, but he didn't grab his chance. Difficult game to come into, but didn't really stake his claim to start tonight. Lyle Cameron was a late fitness doubt, so he was unlikely to ever start. Mikey Moore, we've obviously just discussed. Yusuf Chermiti, he's going to be behind Bojan Miovski at the moment, right? So, and then the only other one is Telo Asgard, who's been right out of form. So, I don't think there's much else that Danny Rule could have done. Danilo's been up and down because he scored those couple of goals early on, but I think his finishing has been poor since. But it makes sense to try and get an extra striker in that team, and he'll probably drop into that number 10 position. I do hope it's Gassama off the left again, Blair. I think he's your one player who has the ability to just be like a game-breaking player, and he's not done it consistently, has he? But in Europe, we've seen that's where he's been at his most off the left in transition. Something we saw Václav Černý do all the time last season. Gassama obviously isn't quite at that level and hasn't been able to do it consistently enough. But if you think of his goal away at Sturm Graz, you think of his goals against Panathinaikos and Victoria Pilsen, it's all been that muscle memory of jinking onto his right foot and trying a shot. So I hope it's just Danilo moving in off the right side with Magoma maybe stretching the game beyond, and then Gassama dropping in on the left-hand side. He's been on the right for a little while now, but given it's wing-backs, given that they're going to be the ones who are providing width, and given it's Max Aarons on his natural side, you'd like to think that Gassama moves back over to the left.
Yeah, I think this could be one of we discussed it a few weeks ago when Rangers went to Easter Road, and you made the point that when the team were going forward, the one fullback would push up and the other fullback would drop in to make it a sort of back four. And I think I see a little bit of that in this formation tonight, that when one goes, you might see the other one dropping in to give it a little bit more balance. I think Jerry Gassama is a big one. We've spoke about this a lot over the last few weeks, how he just looks so much more composed, so much more comfortable coming in off that left-hand side. I think on the right, he's kind of been asked to do a little bit of a job for Danny Rule. And I think being back on that left tonight, I think he's going to look a lot more dangerous. I think he's going to be a lot more comfortable playing off that side, attacking the box from the side that he really likes to. And I think you'll see Jedi Gassama being used as the route towards goal for Rangers a lot this evening.
Comfortable is a word, because on the right, I always think that he's still quick enough to get away from his man, but he's not. His final ball throughout his whole Rangers career has been really poor. I think he's only assisted like one or two goals, and that's not really a false economy because he hasn't created an abundance of opportunities. When he's on the left, he looks more natural, and his end product has been better. And Rule has, as you say, kind of been forced to move him to do a job on the right, because I asked him about it at a press conference a couple of weeks ago, and he effectively said that we've got hundreds of left wingers, hundreds of players who want to move in from the left-hand side onto the right foot, and no one on the right-hand side, which is why Gassama has had to go and do a job from there, as he did at points during his time at Sheffield Wednesday. But yeah, I would expect that he is back on the left-hand side tonight. An opportunity for Bojan Miovski to try and continue his good form at the weekend. And then because Moore's on the bench, you have someone, and Sterling, you have opportunities of players to perhaps give a little bit of a lift in that second half. But you're right to highlight the Hibs game. It's a very similar team. I think it was those four across the middle against Hibs. I think it was the same back three, bar John Suter in for James Tavernier, and it was Mikey Moore, Chermiti and Danilo in the front three. But would imagine it's a similar kind of function. Generally, Chermiti's been favoured because he's an outball and he's big and he's physical. But maybe Miovski will have a little bit of room to run in behind him. For me, it was an absolute no-brainer. He would start because he's a striker and he's scoring, and Rangers have not had that luxury all season.
Yeah, Danilo was getting catching a little bit of heat in the comments. He's a lot of people not happy with his inclusion, but I think it goes back to that earlier point that you said. I just think it's a case of limited options for Danny Rule at the minute. I think, like you said, you look at that bench, you look at Yusuf Chermiti or Telo Asgard. If you put either one of those into that front three, I think you've got people with the exact same reaction saying, why are you near this team? Because I don't think Asgard or Chermiti's performances of late have been anywhere near enough to warrant a start in Europe. So I think Danilo really is the only one you can put in there. Obviously, there is calls for Mikey Moore, but I think that would be a little bit folly to stick him in when he's coming back from an injury, when I think, if we're being honest about it, everyone is saying, okay, we need the best players for the league, and we need to try and make sure that the best players don't get injured further or don't get burnt out when they're playing in these European games, especially when it is well, not so much when I hiding to nothing in Europe, but it's very unlikely that you're going to make it through at this point. So why not save a guy like Mikey Moore for this really tough run of league fixtures that are coming up? Danilo was probably the only option he had to put up there. I do agree that Danilo on the wing, it hasn't worked when he's played that way before. The last time out in Europe at Ibrox, Danilo operated on the wing and he was pretty ineffectual. So I do wonder if it's going to be maybe more of seeing Jedi Gisama drop into that 10 and maybe more of a front two with Majovski and Danilo, or vice versa. Danilo drops in and Gisama and Majovski make up the front two. I don't really think we'll see Danilo hugging the touchline this evening.
Nah.
I don't see that. I think Danilo's seen that before, and he's went, no, there's no point in putting him out there. So I expect Danilo to move inside, whether that be in the part of a front two alongside Bojan Majovski. I don't know what you think about that.
No, the Braga game, it was a back four as well, wasn't it? It was a bit of a strange shape. But again,
yeah,
Danilo's got, I think, 7 muscle injuries, maybe not all muscle injuries, like 7 injuries to deal with, a lot of which are muscle injuries, which we've been discussing on the show. He doesn't have many options. The big criticism of Danilo recently has been that in a back five shape, he should have less running to do than he did that night against Braga. Because I don't think he can cover that type of ground, and that's clearly not his game, supporting the fullback. What I'd like to see more from him is when he gets a shot, to not try and pass it in. Now, he'll probably go and pass one in here beautifully from 20 yards this evening. But you know what I mean? I think that shot at Dundee United where it was blocked just because of the time it took him to take a shot, he's in there to provide a bit of a goal threat, but also to try and link the play. I just think when a chance does come along tonight, he needs to be a little bit more clinical, because those moments have sort of passed him by after he scored a couple of goals early on for Danny Rule. But I agree with you. Limited options. Rule continues to work with what he has at the moment, and let's see what they can do tonight.
So before I let you go and enjoy the game this evening and enjoy the stadium you've been reading up on Ferencvaros over the last few days, I'm not going to press you entirely for a score prediction because I know we're on a hiding to nothing with that. But what kind of game do you expect this evening, and what do you think Rangers are going to come up against this Ferencvaros team led by Robbie Keane, of course?
Yeah, well, they also play the back five system, as we've mentioned. Varga, that goal threat up front is obvious. 9 goals and 9 European starts. Naby Keita plays for them. I don't know if you knew that, Blair, but that's a good bit of football trivia.
That's one of those
passed
transfers that has completely passed me by in modern football. Yes,
passed you by. It's a big night for the home crowd as well, because they could have almost effectively guaranteed their place, not quite in the top 8, but take a big step towards it. They've made their way out of the group stage in the last 2 seasons. It's a club in quite a good moment. Robbie Keane was speaking about that yesterday in relation to the ownership structure that he's working under here, and I expect it'll be quite a hot atmosphere. It's only 22,000, but steep stands, and a big night for the Ferencvaros supporters, as mentioned. Difficult game for Rangers. I just wonder if they'll try and, as I say, surrender a bit of possession. I think the back three gives them more security regardless, and fits what we said at the top of the show with Danny Rule, just working with what he's got. It maybe wasn't one of the fixtures that when the draw was made that people thought that's one of the tougher games. I actually think it is, especially if you look at where Ferencvaros are on the table. One stat to just depress people a little bit before kick-off, Blair, is that Rangers have conceded the highest average chance quality in the whole Europa League. They're at the bottom of that table, which is not where you want to be. That number needs to rise or drop dramatically this evening if they're to have any chance of winning. So yeah, let's see how they go. I think, as I said with Derek this morning, a big win would be so significant for Danny Rule, even if European progression is still unlikely. I think because of fixtures coming up and because of how Rangers have performed so far, I don't think they'll win because of what they showed so far in European competition. You're not really going off of evidence, but more hope. But Danny Rule will be hoping to turn that at some point. He'll be hoping he can try and defy the odds and do it tonight.
Positive note always to end on, Joshua, from you there, just to run through this team.
Realistic.
Let's call it that. For anyone joining us late, the Rangers side to take on Ferencvaros this evening. Jack Butland in goals. We think it will be a back three of James Tavernier, Nasser Giga and Emmanuel Fernandez. 4 across the middle of Max Aarons, Connor Barron, Nico Raskin and Jadon Megoma. And in some capacity, 3 up front of Jedi Gisama, Bojan Majovski and Danilo. And just on the bench, Kelly, Sterling, Stewart, Adamson, Curtis, Cameron, Moore, Asgard and Chermiti. for everyone watching the game tonight. Thank you for watching us first with all your pre-match build-up, and we hope you enjoy the game this evening. And don't forget, the Rangers Review will be back live just after the full-time whistle. I believe it's myself and Johnny who will be here dissecting everything from Ferencvaros versus Rangers this evening. We'll see